I'm Marie Hohtanz, and this is Weekend. Most of us have heard of stamp or butterfly collections, but how about collecting promotional pieces from the Coca Cola company? Weekend also spent some time with a local composer who prefers a synthesizer to an orchestra, and we interviewed Grant Lear, who thinks art should be fun. Doug Llewellyn joins us from Hollywood, James Barber makes the letter M into something delicious, and Dr. Challis reports on health. But first, let's meet Gary Perks. He's a Calgary resident with a basement full of red and white memories in all shapes and sizes.
Coca Cola came out in the market about the late 1800s, and I started collecting probably around 55, 56 in that era, and I've been going ever since. I think to start with, I got interested. I was given a tray by the company as a Christmas present, and it looked too nice to use, so I started collecting it. I put it away, and then I believe the next year we got another tray given to me, and that's when I took an interest in this type of hobby.
His 2 trays have multiplied into more than 500 pieces of Coca-Cola memorabilia. Yet why does he continue collecting?
Well, it's a unique hobby. It's something that everybody probably don't go for or don't have, eh?
And unique hobbies attract the curious. When his collection goes on public display, Gary Perks gets a chance to show and tell the public almost a century of Coke history.
Some people spend quite a bit of time with me, and I'm able to answer. I have a pretty good knowledge of the dates of the trays and the different things that I've picked up, eh? You kind of store it in your mind, or, and we have some books that determine the dates, but I can pretty well tell you the dates of the trays without looking at the books now.
Let's look at a few examples from his Coke collection. Yo-yos, trucks, and rulers, coasters. Pens and lighters, watches, pins. Print-ats, trays, roulette wheels, records. Caps and clocks and paperweights. Thimbles, badges, necklace buckles, openers, and playing cards. Signs and keychains, radios, and Coke machines, and little cars. Whew, and that's just a sample. So how does the lady of the house feel about a basement full of all this?
Well, I think at one time or another my wife was just about ready to divorce me, but I think they think it's pretty good. When they see all the different collections or different amounts of collection I have of this variety of things, I think they think it's pretty good. She takes an interest now, she likes to see what I have, and she kind of looks after it for me.
Obviously, Coca-Cola means something personal for Gary Perks. But what does his amassed collection mean to him financially? And what does one do with a Coke collection?
I'd say my collection's worth between $4,000 and $5,000. I want to have a display built downstairs, some display cases for my small things, and then I'm going to put some trays. I have a wall that features Coca-Cola down in my basement, and we're going to hang some of the trays and pictures up on that wall eventually, as soon as I get my rumpus room finished. So hopefully that'll be in the near future.
And what does Gary Perks, Coca-Cola collector, think of the product itself?
When I have a Coke, I'm smiling. Ah, it's a real thing. Delicious and refreshing.
Wonder if he's ever taken the Pepsi challenge. Weekend meets an international award-winning composer whose second love after music is science fiction. Dr. Challis, Doug Llewellyn, and James Barber join us, and Weekend takes a trip to Trochu, coming up right after this. Albert Maslow wrote that a man will be what a man must be, and that's certainly true of our next subject. When Amin Bhatia was 12, he became interested in synthesizer music. By age 17, he talked his father into buying a small synthesizer. Now, at the age of 20, Amin Bhatia is an international award winner for his entry in a recent competition held in Tokyo. All this from a man with no formal background in music. It sounds incredible, and so is the music. Weekend's Jim Ripley visited his studio.
This basement corner, filled with science fiction and music books, electronic gadgetry, and a collection of posters and awards, is the studio of Amin Bhatia, recent winner of the Roland International Synthesizer Competition. Amin talks about his first place composition.
The piece is called Flight Beyond the Stars. It's very much like a Star Wars type Empire Strikes Back piece. Deals with a space shuttle blasting off into hyperspace. I've always been a science fiction nut. I've loved Star Wars and Star Trek. I'm a devoted Trekkie. And along with that, I also have a love for film music. It's something I plan on getting into in future. John Williams, Jerry Goldsmith, all the people that compose the music you hear for many science fiction movies. And Flight Beyond the Stars is very much like that. It's a 5-minute science fiction music piece. You can hear rockets taking off. You can hear spaceships flying by.
It's a long and complex process. Rhythm and note sequences are recorded one track at a time. This new rhythm sequencer and drum composer are the prizes Amin won in the competition, and they'll make composing much easier. But Amin isn't concerned about the amount of work he puts into a piece.
I think that's where the fun of synthesizer music comes in. The fact that you sit there and you work on a 5-minute piece and take 200 hours to put together, track by track and sound effect by sound effect. It's like an artist when he's painting a picture. He never sees it until he's finally finished putting all those hours in, and then steps back and looks at it. And there's a neat feeling in listening to 200 hours worth of music flash by in 5 minutes. That's where the fun comes in.
Here's a taste of what that fun's all about. An excerpt from Flight Beyond the Stars.
Take synthesizers with me and create synthesized music for film. I think that will be quite a challenge.
A challenge he obviously loves to meet. By the way, if you recognize the style of Amin's Flight Beyond the Stars, it's probably because you've heard the theme for Weekend, composed and produced for us by, you guessed it, Amin Bhatia. We're very proud of him. Right now, Dr. Challis wants to make you feel better with a report from the world of health.
Allergies affect a large portion of our population. As we try to ease our symptoms, we probably contribute millions of dollars annually to pharmaceutical companies. Although the term allergy relates to a large number of immune complex diseases, we commonly use it to refer to asthma, hives, contact skin irritations, seasonal allergies like hay fever, and occasional gastrointestinal problems. Unfortunately, most everything we come in contact with can act as an allergen. Hence, it is often difficult to identify the cause. This is especially true in skin disorders. Allergies may be caused by dust, pollen, smoke, molds, other pollutants, chemicals, drugs, fabric, and even food. Allergies often present themselves as colds that don't get better, chronic coughs, and vague intestinal upsets. If you suspect an allergy, check with your family doctor. After a thorough history and physical, your doctor will attempt to identify a cause. A history of allergies in the family is often a clue. Occasionally, blood tests may help in the diagnosis. Skin testing may be of value, especially in respiratory allergies. If you do have allergies, the simplest but not easiest answer is to avoid the cause. This may require changes in diet, location, occupation, withdrawal of drugs, cigarettes, and sending the dog to grandmother's house. Obviously, you can't get rid of all the house dust and pollen, but furnace filters, frequent dusting, and eliminating dust accumulating carpets may help. Drugs are used to relieve symptoms, not cure them. Cortisone by pill or inhaler may help, but require your doctor's prescription. Desensitization shots are still controversial and are generally used for inhalant allergies such as dust, pollens, and molds, which are difficult to avoid. Unfortunately, allergies are rarely cured. They are often improved, but usually must be tolerated. I'm Dr. Challis. When your body talks, listen.
Well, I hope that makes you breathe easier. James Barber is cooking up something for the letter M, probably for Magnificent. Doug Llewellyn and his Hollywood eyes are focused on some working women. Bill Hutchings takes a hop to Trochu, and Weekend meets an artist who likes ducks. Right after this. Well, as usual, James Barber has found a way of making the ordinary extraordinary. Here's Weekend's favorite kitchen lexicologist with the letter M.
M for mulled wine, glühwein, call it what you like. But what you have to do, first of all, is to get some wine. They bought expensive booze. I bought something else to prove that there is life after Donini. This is Conti. Whoops, I'll put that one in there so I can see. I'll just put about half a bottle of this wine in there. And I will put, for the non-alcoholics, about half this can of apple juice in here, because the process is exactly the same. All you have to learn about with mulled wine is not to boil it, right? You also have to learn to put the nice things in it. I'm going to put orange peel in that one, and I'm going to put orange peel in that one. I'm going to put some lemon peel in that one, and some lemon peel in that one. Now, I'm not going to put the whole lemon in because that's full of acid and it will taste awful. But I am going to put, this is a peeled orange, I'm going to put that in there and just let it cook. I'll show you how to peel an orange. Just get the zest stuff. If you're going to be a professional bartender, just do it with a potato peeler and it just sort of slides it off like that, right? So don't waste that, just put that in there. Get apples and put some apples in each one, and put a lot in, and I'll show you why when we get to the end of it. There's a bit more orange peel should go in there, and then put in about a tablespoonful of sugar, no more. You don't want it to be sweet. It'll give you a hangover if you do. Put in a dozen cloves, roughly. You don't have to count them. I mean, that's about a dozen, okay, and some nutmeg, about a quarter of a teaspoonful in each one, and cinnamon sticks, one in there, whoops, come out, and one in there. And that's really all you've got to do. Now, you're supposed to put, you read all the fancy recipes. I've got a fancy recipe which I'll send you, and it says put port in it, expensive port. Now, if you don't want to do that, and there's nothing wrong with keeping the alcohol content of mulled wine down, put in, instead of putting port in, put grape juice in. Do the same in the apple juice. Welch's grape juice. It's what all these guys who do cooking shows drink instead of drinking wine all the time. Bring it up until it's hot. Just make it up until it's hot. And as it gets hot, take yourself a glass and just put a filter over the top. It's much better if you've got a jug. I haven't got a jug here, but basically all you got to do is to get it out of the pot into the thing. Now, what you do with the apples, look, the apple slices have all gotten themselves soaked in wine and cooked. You put them on a little ice cream and you eat those and give those to the kids while you're back there slapping up the hot wine. That's all. Don't boil it. That's all. Hot wine.
I really think the man is a bartender at heart. For your copy of James Barber's recipe, send a stamped, self-addressed envelope to Weekend, Box 7060, Station E, Calgary, postal code T3C 3L9. Well, Weekend's Doug Llewellyn has been keeping an eye on the working women we watch on television. While some shows are trying to portray women in roles other than housewife or secretary, Doug found a funny show, hot off the typewriter, in the steno pool.
Underway at 20th Century Fox in Hollywood is the production of a television series designed to represent a sizable portion of this country's population, working women. Named for the film that preceded it, 9 to 5 promises to bring to the screen, comedically, office injustices culled from real-life secretaries throughout the nation. The technical consultant for this series is Janice Blood, on loan from an organization aptly named Working Women.
Working Women is a national association of women who work in offices, and basically we fight for increased women's rights on the job. And what that really means is an increase in respect. Respect is when you're not invited into a meeting you belong in, when introductions all around the office occur, and you're left out because, of course, you're only the secretary.
Jane Fonda, the executive producer, hired the award-winning writers from TV's Three's Company to drive the message home.
They did all the groundwork, visiting our organization in Cleveland before they put pen to paper and talking with the women themselves. And you can't help but hear a woman talk about the salary she's making and how she can't go home and visit her sick boy or whatever because the boss won't let her, and not be moved.
They're bottom of the scale, static jobs. They rarely get promoted into management. They're treated like office wives. They're asked to do work that is not part of their job description, and all of that, they're sexually harassed. And basically what we're saying is they should be respected, and the respect should be reflected in the wage as well as the way they're treated.
I'm Doug Llewellyn, reporting from Hollywood.
Well, I'm waiting till they do a show about men's liberation. Now that will be funny. Weekend's Bill Hutchings liberated himself from the city last week, and he took a trip to Trochu.
While the wintry hills near the town of Trochu could hardly seem less inviting, Colonel Armand Trochu of France found them most attractive. In 1903, Armand and a group of men, including Count Paul de Baudroy and some other military types, took up ranching near the town. The community became known as Trochu Valley, but in 1911 it was shortened to Trochu. The French loyalty remained strong, and when the Great War broke out, most of the men returned to defend France, and so ended the development of an old country French settlement. But the town of Trochu picked up and soon developed as the pioneers poured into this promising agricultural area. Today, the town of Trochu serves the local farmers, and in the future, recreational services will be developed in the area. So if you have a Sunday and nowhere to go, take a trip northeast for about an hour and a half and say hi to the folks in the town of Trochu.
Hi, I'm Lorne Wagstaff from Trochu. Weekend will be back in a moment.
What do you suppose pink flamingos, laughing faces, and fat white ducks have in common? Not a whole heck of a lot, you say, and you'd be right. But they do recur in the whimsical paintings of a young Calgary artist. Grant Lear prefers to look at the joyful side of life, and that quality is reflected in all of his work. Weekend visited Grant and asked him about the difference between his paintings and his illustrations.
I don't really think there's a major difference. People tend to separate the two because illustration is generally done for a commercial reason, and depending on the type of illustration you're doing, it can be quite illustrative or it can be quite painterly. And I'm doing a style that is painterly enough that I think it works well as both a piece of fine art and a commercial illustration.
To support himself, he's been a shoe salesman, a TV artist, and a graphic artist for the Calgary Zoo.
The work that we do at the zoo is mostly involved in producing graphics for the education program and a number of different signage programs that we use throughout the zoo just to identify the different animals. It's mostly signage, and a lot of that is right at the exhibit, and there's usually a picture of the animal and then a short blurb about that animal. The environment's very stimulating, and you're outside a lot, and just working around the animals. It's a lot more varied than a typical, say, agency job or working at a station.
It was at the zoo that he first painted the delightful ducks that would become almost a Grant Lear trademark.
I started, the first time I used ducks in a painting was a poster that I was working on for the zoo, and they have a group of Peking ducks in the children's zoo, and I was always very excited by them. They're bright white with, brilliant orange beaks, and they're a simple, solid shape, and just sort of screaming out to be painted and to be used, and you can combine them with so many different things, and that's when I started using them, and I found that they really worked well with the images that I was producing, and I've used them a lot since then. I'm not sure what it is. They're certainly not exotic or anything. That might be one of the qualities that people identify with, because it is something everybody knows about ducks, and especially the simple white ducks that you see everywhere, and it's kind of pleasant to use them in a piece of art.
But it's people who figure most prominently in his work. Wonderfully open, familiar, smiling people, always conveying a sense of fun.
The younger women are different friends, some that I went to school with, and I use my sister a lot, and some of her friends. And then the older women are I used some of my aunts and uncles until they got annoyed, and then I've been using parents of some friends. Inez I use a lot, and she has a sewing club, and they've been meeting for about 30 years, and it's the same group of women, and they were very excited about getting photographed to be in the paintings, and they're just terrific models. They're really good. And it helps when you know the model a little bit. They're more relaxed when you shoot them, and they will do everything you tell them to usually, which is nice.
Those happy faces would seem to reflect Lear's outlook on life. Hasn't he ever experienced rough times?
Like, I don't pay a lot of attention to current events and current affairs because I find most of it depressing, and there's so much bad news around, and that's why I think that I stick to such a constant theme of happiness and people having a good time with a lot of fantasy and good things happening in the work, because there's so much of the bad stuff that's going on that when you go into a gallery, or if you want to have a painting for your home, you'd like to look at something that's going to make you feel good. And so I guess I can't really say that I've had any real rough times or anything, no.
Since graduating from the Alberta College of Art in 1978, he's had successful exhibitions throughout the West, and his illustrations have brightened magazines, books, and posters. And his technique continues to evolve.
It's a series of layers. I begin with a graphite drawing on illustration board, and initially I ink it in solid watercolor inks, and then there's layers of acrylics that are built up over the inks, and then oils are glazed over top of the acrylics, and because of all the different layers, you tend to get a very rich surface, and that's sort of the technique that I use. It's just a building up of layers.
At the tender age of 26, a time when most artists are struggling for recognition, this sweet-natured young man has all the work he can handle. But that doesn't stop his artistic growth.
I want to be able to draw a lot better, to combine the images together on the, compose the pictures better, and hopefully be able to maintain the happiness that I've got in most of the paintings that I produce in a much more sophisticated way. Right now I'm relying on a lot of images that are obviously going to make people feel good, like the use of the ducks and that sort of thing. But what tends to happen with, I'm finding now that I've used some of those images a lot, and I'm anxious to change those, and that's one of the developments that I'm anxious to get working on, so that when people look at my work a couple years down the road, it's not going to be similar at all to what I'm doing now. The change would be such that because of the technique, it would be identifiable as a piece that I had done, but the imagery would be completely fresh and a lot more exciting, I hope.
It's hoped the changes won't be too drastic, that a Grant Lear painting will continue to delight and amuse and leave the viewer with a good feeling. Only 4 years out of art college, his career is developing at an amazing pace.
I've been really pleased and very happy with how quickly things have gone. I've been quite lucky with the response to my work, and it's been very positive, and it's great when you do have that sort of response, because it gives you the initiative to keep working and working hard.
He's really unique. At this very moment, Grant is working extra hard, preparing for a major exhibition in Toronto. And although he confesses to being just a little nervous at the prospect, we know he'll knock their socks off. Well, that wraps up this edition of Weekend. If you know of any interesting people, places, or things that you'd like to see on the show, drop us a note, care of CFCN Television right here in Calgary. I'm Marie Hohtanz. Have a good week.